Hi, Darren. Yeah, going off piece and a bit off script today with a look at 10 awkward, imperfect, kind of difficult records, I guess. By which I mean, ones that are maybe for a number of reasons. I don't know, maybe they just don't jive with fans or critics in quite the same way as, much of the rest of their work, their back catalogue. Yeah, it's a fairly loose concept for what is a fairly loose video today, but I'll try and point out some of the, archetypes along the way using these 10 as examples. Hopefully that'll be a bit of fun. You should get the idea as these things unfold. Yeah, these are purely my take on these. Some of them I actually really like, and others, yeah, I'm kind of with that consensus view. First up, my archetype here, yeah, the Born of Chaos, the Born of Tragedy album. Yeah, first up, number one, I've got Movement by New Order. Yeah, this was the band's 1981 debut, their first debut album, their first full length, following the death of Ian Curtis a year previously. And yeah, it shows a band with ideas, clearly. A lot of the electronic stuff is making an appearance here in one form or another, but, they clearly haven't got their dancing shoes on yet. I guess the problem with Movement is there's no real sense of proper direction. It's very much, transition. Martin Hannett's still producing. It still sounds very, very Joy Division throughout. Yeah, that hesitancy, they couldn't even commit to who was going to be the singer at this point. But it's still interesting. And I think a lot better than its reputation, certainly in the late 80s, would suggest. I think the post-punk revival has, helped a lot in that respect. And it does have at least one, absolute New Order classic in the opening track, Dreams Never End. So second up, my second archetype, this is the kind of the lacking focus debut album, I guess. I've got Three Imaginary Boys by The Cure from 1979. And this record is still a lot of fun, if you ask me. 10:15 Saturday night, Fire in Cairo, the standout tracks to lay listeners, I guess. But you can hear the band working through their kind of punkish influences on some of the tracks, the sneerier, snottier numbers like Object and So What. And that kind of dark trilogy that was to follow, 17 Seconds, Faith, Pornography. The seeds of that are clearly here in a kind of a rudimentary way in things like the title track and, a song like Another Day. Yeah, The Cure clearly sort themselves out very quickly, but I kind of like the grab bag feeling of Three Imaginary Boys. And there are a few cracking deeper cuts here too as well. Songs like Grinding Halt and Meat Hook. At three, yeah, my third archetype. This is the Too Little Too Late album. Also, I guess, how else could you describe it? The damp towel thrown over the torched reputation. As a record, it still works, but you have to get past that kind of slightly smoky aroma to appreciate it. Anyway, I'm going on. Yeah, I'm talking about Shrinkwrapped by Gang of Four from 1995, which is actually a lot better than I've painted it, particularly given the 12 years of disappointment preceding it, that yielded the Hard and the Mall albums. Yeah, just John King and Andy Gill, plus some session dudes at this point. Those session dudes, including Dean Garcia of Curve. But it's very smart and caustic and tough sounding with the kind of, late 80s, early 90s industrial edge to it that, you'll either like or you won't. I think it's a pretty good album. Four, yeah, I've got the punk misstep. Yeah, I've got Cast of Thousands by the Adverts. Yeah, this one's a shame because their debut, Crossing the Red Sea with the Adverts, is easily a top 5 UK first wave punk album for me. But on Cast of Thousands, I think their ambition slightly got the better of them. And whilst I think it's still a better album than it was ever given credit for at the time, it's uneven. They threw the kitchen sink at it, instrumentally speaking. It's got lots of keys, choirs, the works. That side of it constantly clashes, I think, with the band's slightly naive, their willfully primitive musical instincts. Yeah, as a consequence, tonally, it somehow manages to miss both the post-punk target and the new wave one. But I think it's a pretty fascinating album nonetheless. I think Awkward is definitely the perfect description for this one. At five, I've got the Never Meant to Exist album, or kind of a variant of the Contractual Obligation record, yeah. I've got True Stories by Talking Heads. Yeah, this was never meant to be a Talking Heads album in its own right. Yeah, the songs on this album, the original songs were sung by the actors, amongst them John Goodman in the David Byrne movie of the same name. And yeah, the film's backers, the Money Men, they pushed Byrne into re-recording the songs with his vocals and releasing it as a Talking Heads album to give the movie an extra kind of promotional push. And again, you'll see a pattern emerging here. Like most of this list, I think it's a far better album than most reviewers gave it credit. Tracks like Love for Sale, Wild Wild Life, City of Dreams, being very capable and in a similar kind of style, feel to the preceding album. That would be 1985's Little Creatures. Also, of course, historically, yeah, this is the album that gave Radiohead their name. 6, classic archetype here. That is the overproduced album. And I've got Hunkpapa by the Throwing Muses from 1989. Yeah, really, it's quite hard to strip that jagged emotional fury out of Kristen Hirsch's songwriting, but Hunkpapa has a really, really good go at it. It's too clean, too pristine, sounds very small and boxed in. And you can hear the best songs here on this album, the incredible Mania, most of all. They're just straining to be set free. Yeah, Dizzy was the lead single, which is quite a kind of a cute, I guess you'd call it, poppy number by Kristen's standards, but even that didn't translate to sales in the way that maybe 4AD had hoped. On the upside, they absolutely smashed it 2 years down the line with The Real Ramona. That was Tanya Donnelly's last recording before leaving to form Belly, which I think is sonically at least superior to Hunkpapa in every way. At 7, I've got the, it pales in comparison album, otherwise like, the end of a streak. I'm probably going to get some stick for this one, but yeah, from 1990, I've got Bossanova by the Pixies. Yeah, I am quite prepared that people will disagree with me on this one. Retrospectively, from the reviews I've skimmed of Bossanova, this one appears to be holding up, in the kind of the zeitgeist. But honestly, to me at the time, following that 1, 2, 3 of Come On Pilgrim, Surfer Rosa, Doolittle, Bossanova sounded like a bit of a step down to me. Yeah, not a bad album, but yeah, I think it just suffers in comparison to everything from that staggering 3-year run that the band had immediately preceding it. Yeah, tracks like Valuria, Rock Music, Allison, even Dig for Fire, I think they're all in the plus column for Bossanova, but side 2 really drags on more and more as it goes, and to me the album ends with a kind of a whimper. Yeah, you could argue the band tensions were to blame for this. Yeah, the Pixies were slowly pushing Kim Deal out, and Black Francis was pushing to become a solo artist. But I don't know if that really explains Bossanova, or explains why I ultimately prefer Trompe Le Monde, the album after this, to Bossanova itself. As ever, your mileage may vary on this one. My 8th archetype is the major label Letdown album. Yeah, it was going to come, wasn't it? They sold out, man. Yeah. At 8, I've got Shot by the Jesus Lizard from 1996. The band's major label debut. Their first without Steve Albini engineering it. But it did still feature the original drummer, Mac McNeely, at this point, who did leave shortly after this album. And I think it's the, hey, you turned your back on Albini move that really grates with most of the long-time fans of the band. I don't know. I've always had a very soft spot for this record. It's not like, they went all commercial, they went all grunge, they went all metal on Shot. Far from it. I think some of the songs here would, I think, sit very happily on their Touch and Go period albums without, drawing any fire. Songs like Thumper, Thumbscrews is especially good. Mailman, Skull of a German. But I do seem to be in the minority on this one. I'm happy to admit that. Okay, at 9, I've got the mid-period slump album. Yeah. I've got Lifeblood by the Manic Street Preachers from 2004. I've probably mentioned the Manics on the channel before. I'm sure I have. I was never a mega fan, but they're pretty much hometown heroes for me, so I'm always kind of slightly drawn to them. I've given them plenty of chances, let's put it that way. And some of this stuff I like, the rest not so much. And ironically, it's the album that everyone raves about, the superfans love, that being the Holy Bible. That's the one that leaves me cold. And this one, Lifeblood, the one that, even the band hated at the time, it's the one I like. Yeah, it comes in that kind of post Designed for Life, you tolerate this period, the high point, I guess. And yeah, they definitely had a bit of a kind of a lull after those. Yeah, Lifeblood was released at kind of peak keen, I guess you'd say. You know, all those identikit kind of post Britpop acts just after the turn of the millennium. And I think Lifeblood got some stick for sounding like that in some ways. I don't know, I hear it a bit differently. Sonically, to me, it sounds like a real love song to the 1980s, or at least the 1980s I remember. You know, I hear some Johnny Marr guitar and harmonica in there. There's hints of kind of the barbed, kind of shiny pop of the. There's even a bit of U2 kind of stadium guitar and some of that kind of style council-y Motown beat on a track like Empty Souls. I can't really explain more beyond that. It just hits a spot for me that some of the more identifiably Manic stuff doesn't. And yeah, I see that after, you know, disowning and disavowing it for years, it seems, the band have kindly made their peace with it. They've rediscovered some appreciation for it. Yeah, some of their festival appearances over the summer just gone has shown them, you know, dipping into Lifeblood for the first time in ages. And I have to say that some of those songs sound pretty good to me still. 10, my final archetype category, whatever you want to call it. I've got the Divided Fan Base album. Yeah, this is Radiohead's King of Limbs. They're just one of those bands, aren't they? Radiohead. Some people would just rather they kept remaking the bends ad infinitum, whilst others are, you know, fully on board with their more esoteric, electronic influenced, dystopian, experimental art rock stuff. And I think In Rainbows, the immediately preceding album, seemed to find a kind of a sweet spot in that continuum between the two sides of the fan base somewhere. And not so with King of Limbs, I think. The follow-up, it's a much more difficult, more experimental, less eager to please record. Maybe it's just the artiness of it all. Maybe it was, you know, Tom York cutting loose with those solo dance videos. The one for Lotus Flower is the one I'm thinking of here. I don't know. The closing half of the album is great. But I guess by this point, you're either team Creep, Team Benz, or Team Experimental. I should stress I'm not the world's biggest Radiohead fan. That would be my wife. So I asked her, and yeah, she loves King of Limbs to bits. And she just said, yeah, listen to Codex. So yeah, say no more. There you go. And that's it for today. I'll be throwing in some of these kind of looser, kind of quicker, more off-the-cuff numbers to break up some of the bigger, more monolithic videos I have planned. So yeah, expect to see maybe a few more of these kind of short videos sometime soon. In the meantime, all the usual stuff, you know, thumbs ups, subscriptions, all that stuff. You know the drill by now. I won't hammer it home. Basically, yeah, thanks for watching. Yeah, I'll call it a day there. Yeah, you take care. I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.